What I learned from being broke. In this video, we're gonna go over 5 things I learned from being broke. These ended up being incredibly important life lessons that helped me to not be broke in the future, not be broke now. And if you're someone who is struggling with money or just wants to be able to take these lessons that I learned and apply them to your own life to bring more money into your life, these things will also apply to other areas of your life, but we're focusing mainly on finances right now, then keep watching because that's coming up next. Hi there, welcome to the video. My name is Dave and this is HeartSpace if you're new to the channel, where we are releasing videos every single day to help you live life more in your way. So if you want more videos like this that are gonna help you with your finances, living in a more fulfilled way, living from your heart, following your passions, being able to live a life from your passions, stuff of that nature, then hit that subscribe button and bell icon so you don't miss any videos that we release. Now today, I wanna go over money because I've had many situations, especially when I was a little bit younger, where I was broke. Where I was overdrawing or having overdraft fees from my bank, where I literally had no money. Some of you may have seen my homeless video where I lived out of a truck for a year and a half, or not a year and a half, sorry, a month and a half. And this applied to that time when I was broke as well, and that was going on at that time. But one of the cool things about looking back at certain times in your life you once saw as very difficult or very hard, or even to a certain level traumatic, is you can look back at them and learn from the lessons that the universe was trying to present you at the time. You know, I do not believe I was living out of that truck for no reason. I do not believe that I was broke for no reason. There were lessons to be learned in that situation, and I learned quite a bit that have helped me since then not only not be broke, but to also live in much more abundance. So let's get into the 5 things that I learned from being broke, and we're gonna go in reverse order, starting with number 5. So very simple to start off, and I'm sure anyone who's been in this situation can relate. Number 5 is, I didn't like it. I learned very quickly this is a circumstance and situation I didn't want to be in. Now that might seem obvious, but it's very important to actually make that distinction, because a lot of people will be in that kind of situation and just let it happen and just be like, well, I guess this is what's gonna happen and I suck and I can't earn money or whatever else it is. I recognized that I didn't like it, I didn't want to live this way, and it really lit a fire under my ass, so to speak, to get out of that situation. You know, it gave me the motivation and inspiration not only to get out of the situation of being broke, but to make sure I did things moving forward so that I never found myself in that situation again. Because I did start to understand that there were things that I had done that led me to being in that situation. It's not that like life just gave me a crap sandwich and I just was, you know, randomly broke. No, there were things I did leading up to that allowed for me to be in that situation. And so the first thing I learned is I don't like this. I don't want to live in this way. So it motivated me and inspired me to actually move forward and get out of the situation I was in. And so that can really be, although a simple but very important lesson, especially if you're struggling with your finances, understanding that I don't really want to live this way, and then starting to take the steps to do something about it. So I just want to give you that one first, but let's move right into number 4. So playing off that, number 4 is things in my life, circumstances in my life are not going to change unless I do. And I find this is the trap most people fall into when they have a tough situation. So you might be broke. You might even be in a homeless situation like I was. You might have some other kind of thing going on. You can insert really any situation into here. But what a lot of people end up doing, instead of what I'm going to offer you now, is they end up bemoaning their circumstances. They complain about it. They go, oh, life is so unfair to me. But what I realized was that I put myself in that situation because of the things that I did, thought, and spoke about and felt prior to that situation. And I knew that if I could change the way I viewed myself, I knew that if I could approach this differently, that things would change for me in my circumstances. I ultimately knew I needed to change before my circumstances could change, because my circumstances simply reflected who I was in that moment. And I was someone who was terrible with money. I was someone who was very negative. I was all of these different things. But I knew that if I changed myself, my circumstances would change. And I have found that to be true ever since that time when I learned that, all the way up into now, where I'm living an amazing life because I've changed so much. I'm not even the same person I was when I was broke. I am not the same person I was when I was homeless. You know, I had the same label. I was in the same body physically, although there's been changes there as well in my health and things of that nature. but I don't even recognize mentally, emotionally, and spiritually the person I was back then. And the reason for that is because I've changed so dramatically from that point to now. And because I've changed, my circumstances have changed. You know, a lot of people try and change the circumstances and then think that the circumstances will change them, but it's backwards. The more you change, the more you improve, the more you evolve, the more you grow, the more you learn about money and how to handle it, the more your situation will improve. The more you'll know how to go out there and act differently, but it has to start from you. And when you change, your circumstances will change. And that was one of the biggest lessons I learned from being broke. Number 3 is when I started getting even a little bit older, and this experience had been a few years back. I would still think back to it, but what I started really realizing was that in order for me to become abundant, which a lot of people have to do, I have to first feel abundant. Now stay with me here, because this is also an idea given to me by one of my mentors who is unbelievably successful, especially financially and pretty much in all of his life. He's living in a very incredible life. And he goes over this concept quite a lot. And it's really coming from the idea, again, that for your circumstances to change, you have to change. But what ends up happening is when people realize that at first, and this happened for me too, they think like, I have to grind, I have to hustle, I have to do all of these things, I have to change my self-image, and that stuff's all true. But what we end up coming to later is it's the energy and the feeling of how you're doing things that actually end up influencing your external reality the most. And so what he talks about is most people are there's 2 bank accounts. You have your financial bank account, so your actual dollar amount in the physical world, your financial bank account, and your emotional bank account. And like I already mentioned, most people think the higher their financial bank account, the higher their emotional bank account will grow. But it's actually the opposite. You need to reverse it. And so the more that I felt abundant, the more that I genuinely saw myself as abundant, the more abundance came in my life. And so you reverse the formula, and instead of going like, I need to, find ways to shove money into my financial bank account, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna grind. Instead of doing that, fill up your emotional bank account first. Focus on feeling good. Focus on feeling abundant now. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to be blissing out on the couch and you're taking no action. What ends up happening is you take the time to feel abundant and feel really good right now, and this can take like 10 minutes. And then from that place, you are going to start getting the intuitive downloads. You are going to start getting the ideas in just like waves of what's going to actually make you money, of what's actually going to help bring that abundance that you feel into your life physically. And then you go out and take that action. But when I started going after the feeling of abundance and making myself feel that first, and actually feel it, not just intellectualize it, abundance started showing up in my life. And that was abundance of many different things, by the way, because a lot of people think that money's going to make them happy, but it's not. And there's so many examples of people going over this that reveal that that's not the case. However, when you just focus on abundance and you just feel grateful, for example, that you have an abundance of oxygen to breathe. Maybe you have an abundance of amazing relationships in your life. Maybe you have an abundance in the sense that you always have enough to eat. You have shelter. You have all of these different things. Find the abundance in your life and more abundance will come. And the great thing is the universe doesn't recognize this type of abundance versus this type of abundance. It just recognizes abundance. And so what I found is the more abundant I felt and the more abundance I recognized in my life at whatever level, the more of it came into my life in other areas, including my finances. Again, my mentor says, one thing you can do to feel really abundant is just to feel like, wow, the abundance of oxygen around me right now allows me to breathe and sustain myself and to be alive in this amazing universe, an amazing world. And if you can feel abundance just on that level, you'll find in other areas it starts coming in your finances, in your relationships, and so many other things. But again, number 3 is feel the thing first and the physical will follow. And again, a lot of people think that means, you just sit down and you daydream and you ask for it and it'll come. No, that's a part of it. But doing the daydreaming, doing the visualization, doing the feeling practices to feel good now is just a catalyst for getting you to not only align with what's actually going to bring results, but to actually go out there and do it. But now you're going to be doing things from a totally different place than if you're doing it from a place of desperation where you're like, I need to get money to feel a certain way, or I need to go out and get abundance. How do I do? Okay, I'm going to go, try and mold the physical world in the way that I see fit in order to get abundance. And that just doesn't work. But if you go inwardly and feel abundant now, and then take that abundance feeling outwardly into the world through your output, magical things can happen and more abundance will appear in your physical reality through doing so. Number 2 is what I give to the universe, I get back. Now, this is similar to number 3, but I want to make sure you're aware this applies to everything. This does not just apply to abundance. This does not just apply to one singular feeling. Like attracts like, and the universe is simply going to reflect back to you what you give it. And why this is really important is because so many people, especially if they're broke, or especially if they're afraid of becoming broke, is they are thinking, acting, feeling, and speaking from a place of brokenness. And when you do that, the only thing you're going to get reflected back is more brokenness. You know, the universe really only acts as a mirror. You are a transmitter and a receiver, and you will receive back more of what you transmit. So you'll transmit out and receive more back of that. So if you're thinking thoughts of I'm broke, I can't do this, I can't earn more than this amount, or whatever else it is, you are only ever going to receive thoughts back on that level. But again, if you're thinking things like I'm abundant and you're feeling it, remember, the key to the universe, guys, is to understand that the universe is a feeling universe. And what it really is an energy universe, an energized universe. It speaks in terms of energy. Feelings are energy. You can think of it this way: emotion is energy in motion, right? And so when you feel abundant, when you feel love, when you feel gratitude, when you feel joy, and you transmit that out into the universe outwardly from inner to outer, you will receive back from outer to inner the same things, right? And it will also influence your physical reality. And so become very aware of the way in which you speak to yourself and the way you speak about yourself to others and the way you actually speak about others. Become very aware of your thoughts. Are your thoughts self-serving or self-sabotaging? Get really aware of your energy. Are you feeling really tense and really stressed or very, like broken down? Well, it might be time to, do a little meditation and start feeling better and then go off and do it from there. But it's very important that you monitor these things, because understand that the universe works consistently. And so if you are consistently sending out the thoughts, the feelings, the words, and the actions, the energy from your actions of lack, then you're going to receive that back, even if you're doing it 51% of the time and 49% of the time you're doing the other stuff. If you tip the scale to you're now thinking, feeling, speaking, acting from a place of abundance, from a place of joy, from a place of love, from a place of wealth, all those kind of things, well, guess what you're going to receive back? All right? And so just to understand that what you transmit, you will receive. And again, this comes back to the idea of you are responsible for your circumstances. No one's really in a circumstance, believe it or not, that they haven't created themselves, whether before they came to the planet or whether they are doing things in this current lifetime that have led to certain circumstances. Like, again, I was homeless for a reason. It wasn't like I was living a phenomenal life and had amazing thoughts and everything, and then life was like, forget it, just make him homeless or whatever. No, I was thinking very much thoughts of lack. I had thoughts of doubt. I had all those things building up to the point where my circumstances reflected that. And in that case, that was being homeless. That was being broke. And so in the same way, make sure you're really monitoring the way in which you speak to the universe, which you do through your thoughts, the energy from your words, the energies from your actions, and of course, most importantly, from your actions, your feelings, your emotions themselves. And last but not least, guys, number one thing that I learned, and I learned this much later on, and it makes total sense to me now when I look back at my situation then and now, and it's money is simply a byproduct of the value that you give. Money is simply a byproduct of the value that you give. You see, when I was broke, when I was homeless, I also recognized that I didn't really serve anyone else other than myself. I was very selfish. And there's nothing wrong with being selfish to the point of self-love, filling up your own cup so that it gets to a point of overflow, and then you can share that with other people. That's fine. But I wasn't like that. I was very selfish, self-serving, only cared about myself, only cared about my needs. And it's very funny, people who are in very negative emotions, actually tend to be very selfish. And usually that's for a reason, because you need to be selfish, but in a more positive direction to get yourself out of a hole before you can go on to help others. But I wasn't receiving value back because I wasn't giving value out. Again, the transmitter and the receiver. If I don't give value out into the universe, out to other people, then why would I receive any back? You will almost never get something for nothing. You get value for value. And value or money is a byproduct of giving more and more value. And so now as I create videos and I share experiences and I do things that help people transform or shift, or I do things that help people learn a skill or something of that nature, I receive value in equivalence to how much I'm doing that. Does that make sense, right? So you think about a company that's making a lot of money, well, how much of a service are they providing? You think of maybe a coach, let's say like someone who coaches people who's making maybe millions of dollars. Well, that's because they're giving millions of dollars worth of value to their clients, right? Where if it's someone who's a new coach, they might be earning almost nothing. You know, my girlfriend, for example, is a coach and she coaches people and she earns quite a nice amount now because she offers a ton of value. But in the beginning, she was giving away free sessions to hone her craft and to become a more valuable coach. And that's the difference when you're starting out. You know, you might have to allow yourself to develop into someone who is able to provide more value before you can receive it back. But a lot of people have this sense of entitlement or this sense of like, I should just have it for no reason. But again, there's an equivalent exchange. There's always, you're going to receive back what you're giving off. And if you're not giving off value, not giving off something that's actually helping someone else or is actually assisting something else, then you're not going to receive any equivalent back, right? And so that was one of the most important lessons I learned from being broke, from looking back at that and going, yeah, when I was broke and I was living out of a truck and all this different stuff, I provided value for no one. I didn't even provide value for myself. You know, I didn't even give myself enough value to see myself as someone who could come out of this. And eventually I did, and I got out of it. Eventually these shifted, but when I was going through that situation, I wasn't providing any value, and so I wasn't getting any back. And my circumstances were the way they were because of that. And so always remember that money is simply a byproduct of the value you're giving off, the value you are providing. And when you can hook into that and find ways to actually provide value, people will look at that and be like, yeah, I'm willing to give you value back in return for that value. So example, maybe you're an incredible coach that's able to help people transform their lives. And someone's like, yeah, I'll pay you $200 a session to help make these changes in my life. And then they see the changes and they're like, that's money well spent. I will easily give that. You know, there are people who will pay certain coaches, you know, certain very successful people financially that will pay coaches $1 million a year to coach them because the value they're offering through their coaching is worth more to them than that $1 million. And that might seem absurd to someone who's not used to operating at that level from a financial aspect, but to the person who's paying the money, it makes total sense because they know they're going to receive, you know, that value or more back from the coaching. I can tell you, I've spent thousands of dollars on singular coaching products. I'm just coming out of one that's from one of my mentors that cost thousands of dollars. But I can tell you, I feel like I've received tens of thousands of dollars, if not more value from that product. Because one other thing is also make sure you always over-deliver. So provide more value than you're actually receiving back, but you'll end up receiving a lot of value in that way. And because of how much value this thing is providing me, I was more than happy to part with value in the form of money in order to receive that value, if that makes sense. So I started understanding one of my biggest lessons from being broke was that I was broke because I was offering no value. It's not that I wasn't valuable. Don't think this means you're not inherently valuable. You are, but you might not be in the marketplace. This doesn't mean that I should have necessarily be in a situation where I'm fighting for survival. That's not what it means. You know, I would love to see a world where that's not the case, but I did need to go through that to learn these lessons. So there you go. So I'm not bemoaning this at all. But that's the point I learned is when I provide more value and I'm seeing this, the more value I've been providing, the more my finances have been increasing. And as I continue to be able to provide more and more value, I know that's going to be the case more and more. So anyway, guys, again, that's what I learned from being broke. The 5 main things I learned. There's other little stuff I learned as well, but I think if you apply each and every one of these things, if you're struggling with your finances or a certain abundance in certain areas, I know you will start seeing changes over time. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this one. As always, I love you, and I will see you in the next one.